North America's farthest west highway point. Going to do some reading for us tonight, as I usually do, starting just a little bit earlier than normal. I'll read this story, and then we'll take a little break, and I'll read some more later on. This first story is called Wall by Archpriest Alexei Lisniak. Despite the shortage of students in the distant 2000 years, Pasha Brudanin was still expelled from the Pedagogical Institute. From the first year, in September, I had to return to my native Viselki. At home, Pasha had asked why he was like this, and Pasha honestly answered, "Everyone there is a fool." That's why his fellow villagers nodded and whispered behind their eyes that Pashka himself was a fool like his father. The kingdom of heaven was the same, that's why. 400 kind countrymen lived in Viselki. It was cramped for the young man, but Pasha no longer left for happiness, but quickly found happiness for himself in the neighborhood, and married this happiness. His wife, the beautiful Elena, a former classmate, was also asked to leave the institute in the same September, however, from the agricultural one, but also for an understandable reason. They are all idiots there. So to loneliness met, as in that song. The newlyweds were accommodated in the house of the deceased grandmother, and Pasha had to somehow feed the family. The era of collective farms at the time had already passed, and the village was bustling with might and main. A visitor, as they say, farmer Mogamed Mogomedov, who had his own herd of sheep, so Pasha rushed in to hire him. Mogomed was delighted and even smiled. "Oh dear, come in the morning to graze sheep." And Pavel pouted, "What kind of sheep? I am a man with a higher, albeit unfinished, deputy of some kind, or an accountant, so be it." Magomedov raised both hands in response and barked in his mountain skill. Pasha did not know the mountaineer, but Magomedov's son, Magomed Jr., explained that his father, they say, will herd his own sheep himself, and he does not need someone else's sheep at all. Sad Pavel returned home and told his wife that Magomedov was just as much a ghoul as the dean at the institute. My wife reacted with understanding, and the young family still wanted to eat. It must be said in the village of Viselki is quite a nice place. 2 streets have crept along opposite banks of a narrow pond. The houses are reflected in the reservoir, along with their front gardens and mountain ashes. There are bridges under the houses on the water, and behind the gardens, behind the houses, wherever you look, there are picturesque meadows where the famous Magomedov leads his sheep. Behind the meadows, there are forests with roe deer, wild boars, and honey mushrooms. This is such a beauty. At that time, neither gas nor asphalt had reached Viselki. Silence stood like in paradise. The ruins of a farm stuck out outside the village, and a goat was grazing on the lawn in the center of the settlement. Near the goat, opposite the village council, the miraculously surviving church log wall leaned. People called this wall falling, and some of them are Pisa. One evening, Pasha was wandering around the village, and his feet carried him to the same lawn. A familiar old woman had already united her goat and dragged it home. The animal plodded reluctantly. The former student followed them with his gaze and wisely, as it seemed to him, sighed deeply. Oh, we're the same. Then, through the dry weeds, he thoughtfully walked around the falling church wall once, and then twice. He looked to the earth and dreamed of the high of those spears, perhaps, where there is justice, where stupid deans herd sheep themselves, where everyone has his own leg on the table. And suddenly, under the very wall, he saw a forged, square-long, real historical, a nail. Picked it up. However, a weighty nail, 50 grams or even 100. Pavel Brudanin poked a rotten log with a nail. The nail was a quarter deeper, and when Pasa pulled it out, there was even a square hole, like from a bayonet. He scraped the fine with a key, white metal glowing under the rust. White metal, wow. It suddenly dawned on Pavel the priest's treasures, which had not been found during the kulak's confiscation, were still excited. All the village teenage boys, after all. Melted down, it's good that no one understood this before. Oh ho, clever, the priest forged a dozen of these silver nails and hammered them into the wall. And hello, try to guess. At home, Pasha ate fried potatoes with an appetite. He pushed the frying pan aside, brushed off the crumbs, mysteriously laid out his find on the table, and called his beautiful wife. Look. Howdy, everybody. Good to see you. Wow, nail, his wife shrieked. Reached for the object, but Pasha slapped her on the hand and put the nail in his pocket. I'll go to the district tomorrow and show it to someone. After all, if you sell it, maybe it's not even silver at all, but made of platinum. That night passed peacefully. The first bus from the village left before dawn. Pasha drove to the central district square, behind which there is a market. Behind the market, there was a pot-bellied church with a cheerful Easter cake. When Paul went up to the church shop with his nail, the service had not yet begun. People gathered and greeted each other, placed candles around. Pavel Brudanin stood at the altar with a candle, and when the priest ran past, grabbed him by the sleeve. Look what I have for your part, the church. Father turned the nail, looked around, weighted it in his palm. 100 grams, a real barn. I say a church one, Pasha objected. Silver. This is from our former church from Veselki. My great-grandfather once built it. Brudanin unexpectedly lied. It's a pity that there is almost nothing left of the temple. The ghouls broke it. You're good about the church, and why did they bring the nail? Sell it. It's silver. Will you take it? The priest was disappointed. I thought you wanted to receive the temple. Do you sell nails? I thought you wanted to revive the temple, rather. Do you sell nails? Revive? Pasha was surprised. For some reason, he never thought about revive. And what a promising thought. Wow. The prospect of commanding the rival inspired Brudanin in a moment. He even forgot about the nail, blurred to his ears. And how are they usually revived? Temples? It's simple. You gather people, clear the site, you collect money in peace, buy materials, workers too, register with the authorities, this, that. I will come, pray, and cheer you up. I will tell you something. As soon as you restore it, you will invite a bishop and consecrate it. He will appoint a priest for you, and you will heal. And what about the salary? What is the salary? Mine, the manager's. Where is it issued in such cases? Probably at the place of work, the priest smiled. Where do you work? The pink immediately flew off Pasha. He realized everything. He became serious and even angry. Well, he drawled, looking back at the cunning priest. And the priest, it turns out, too, like our Magomed, wants to be on someone else's hump. Well, well. So you won't buy the nail? No. All right, Pasha frowned, turned to leave, and muttered, we'll see, we'll see. He escaped from the porch and walked through the market. The summer day was right. The rows of vegetables were fragrant. Cabbage, onions, carrots, watermelons, melons, grapes. Smoked bacon smelled from the meat row, and hot bread from the open wagon. And from the last counter, a cheerful brown pig's head was looking at Pasha. For some reason, in an Uzbek skull cap. Pavel walked faster. All around, the grandmothers were selling brooms, sunflower seeds, and mittens, beckoning. At the exit, near the gypsies, an unshaven peasant was shaking and giving away a bucket of rusty bent nails, almost for nothing. Pasha stopped. How much? Guess. Half a liter? Take it by the cheek. No, I don't need a bucket. Then take a handful. I'll pour it into my pocket. Thank you, I already have one in my pocket, only a real one. Pasha snatched out his church treasure, turned it over and poked the peasant's nose with his hat. Have you seen it? A fool or something? The peasant was offended. You're a fool yourself. You need to drink less. You? And Paul went. After all, there was something to do before the return of the bus. Peromaiskaya Street stretches through the entire town. In addition to the administration, the military registration and enlistment office, the savings bank and the police. There was a cinema converted from a synagogue, a restaurant, and a museum. Of the free establishments on this Sunday, only the police and the museum have opened so far. Pasha chose the museum. In the hallway of a one-story local history institution near the Dutch woman, a bald old caretaker in a waistcoat and a braided shirt was sitting on a stool. He threw blocks into the furnace. The chirbachkas were blazing and crackling, and in the silence of the museum there was the smell of the village. We started talking. The old man, it turned out, not only stoked, but he also served as director here. He was happy to see the visitor, volunteered to accompany Pavel Brudanin through the only museum hall. Pasha sluggishly looked at the decree on assigning urban status to the settlement, looked sourly at the cap of the Commissar Kobylikin, the whip of the Atman Tartarsky, the holster of the Partisan Mikhailov, and the shoes of Rabbi Zlotnikov shot by the Banderites. The old man enthusiastically showed Pasha a green German helmet and a scattering of spent cartridges, which every local boy kept in secluded places behind the sheds, as well as a mortar, a spinning wheel, a sickle, a blast shoe, exactly the same ones that were gathering dusts in the attics of all the Veselsky. Then he came to a display case where a dozen copper coins and several very familiar square nails lay behind the glass. Here the visitor's eyes began to play. But what a job! Yes, the old man picked up, and I'll tell you, in our shuttle before the revolution, blacksmiths mastered and developed for the whole country. Interested? Very much. The excursionist snatched his own exhibit from his pocket. How much can it cost? The historical value is undoubted, the guide rejoiced. It's a testimony. We have 3 buckets of them in the closet from all over the district, God willing. Yes, but I have a church one. Maybe even Pasha lowered his voice silver. The old man became serious, looked at Pavel intently, so that he was even embarrassed, and whispered conspiratorially, "Are you interested in history? I'll show you something now." He hobbled to the watchman's table, took out a plump folder. "Here, look. Here are copies of documents. Everything was obtained from the archives. The former director, Kaimovich, a very clever man, wrote down everything about the churches for himself. It's about everything, about the whole country. And my nail, hush, young man, hammer it into the wall on a beautiful corner and hang this folder on it, and be healthy forever. Look, the late old man, Kaimovich, arranged it alphabetically. Here's the letter A. What villages do we have on A? That's right. Afanasyevo. We looked, the parish of Afanasyev church had 300 souls. The priest served Vasily Kunanunikov. The arable land with so many desiatinas. This is not necessary. And the mug collection, as much as 800 rubles in silver. Where are you from? From the villages. From Zelki. Letter V, yes, here. Pokrovsky's parish, 500 peasants, so many descendants of arable land. So here it is, plate and mug collection, 700 rubles, gold. Do you understand me? Why do you have the whole archive, or what about priests and income? After all, Kaimovich wrote it out. He did not write it out for bad. Do you like it? Yes, I do. Take this folder, I'll tell you, study it, and still think that when the Reds came, the priests ran away. And what about income? Where's the income, I ask you? The walls are rotten, but the silver gold is not rotted. It has never been found. It is waiting. Do you understand me for my logic, or don't you have a head? I'm an old man, as you can see, but when you find that income for yourself, half for me. If I were younger, I would. Well, okay, we'll rewrite the receipt, contract, passport, and take all these documents, and that's it. Pasha signed and took it, and he left. The caretaker escorted him to the porch and whispered to himself, "You're crazy, what if?" The day was heating up well. Indian summer flooded the town up to the rooftops, and now there was no need to graze sheep to feed themselves. Everything immediately became fine. There was a car with a trailer before the return bus, and Pasha was just walking around. I went to the bus station, bought a ticket, drank tea in the buffet for the last one, and ate a bagel. Then he wandered into the red and gold city garden, sat down on a bench there, and began to leaf through the district history of the local historian, Kaimovich. Pasha Brudanin was happy with the names of familiar villages. Everywhere it turned, that even the villages where the last veterans of the collective farm and, and the starvation life were now living or two or three thin huts. Life was once in full swing. Some well to do food was served, and the clerk brought him a censer from so many pounds of pure silver. After lunch, the weather was quite summery, and there was more people in the city garden. A boat station was working on the lake, and someone was already attaching oars to the sides. Rafik drove up to the wooden stage, unloaded the old musicians. They went up to the stage, opened their trunks, and the golden trumpets sparkled dazzlingly in the sun. Forgive me, my voice, I'm still struggling. The old men sat down for a long time and kept waiting for some Yasha, who had forgotten the drum stump at home. But at last Yasha was brought. He hit his drum with a stump on the belly and the crown of the head with a cymbal. And Strauss began. The most real. People exposed their faces, handkerchiefs, and bald spots to the October sun. The little ones licked ice cream. A couple of old women with permanent hair were waltzing in front of the stage, and both of them were leading. After Strauss, the Emmer waves and other things that happen in good local parks on weekends swayed. When the lady broke out, the very same man appeared at the stage who, it seems, had sold his bucket of nails. He stepped in a circle, spread his wing, raised his nose, and went to step out, his chest like a wheel. The people clapped to the beat. The man accelerated like a stagnant locomotive, and when he warmed up, he began to write such pretzels that pensioners forgot about all their dominoes. A baby next door jumped into a stroller, and ladies with permanent heads put their fingers in their mouths and whistled. Now the orchestra fell silent, and the peasant danced and danced. However, it was time to leave. The bus was coming soon, and the musicians, suddenly dressed up in identical hats, threw off their lapserdacks and announced Felix, got up from his chair and laughed, his clarinet to tears. Old Yasha kicked his feet near the drum. The permanent ladies joined hand. The peasant who was dancing, the lady stood for a while, thought, and sat down. Sorry, this is some of the translation is a bit hard. Pavel returned home cheerful, had a dinner, sat on the porch for a while, and had a drink. Yes, hopes for a nail breadwinner did not come true, so what? They did not take him as a director accountant, so what? Before going to bed, Pasha opened the folder again and found information about his Veselki. The parish had 33 desiatinas of arable land. In the fence of the temple, there was a church house. Priest Karmashkin and clerk Karmanikov served. They had income. Well, that's how much, if with our money. The beautiful wife sniffled sweetly in her sleep. Pasha sat down next to her, closed his eyes, but he did not sleep. The golden income of priest Karmashin, whose bones had already decayed somewhere, was not in any way. It would be better to convert that gold into dollars at the current exchange rate and understand whether it is possible to buy a Volga, at least a used one. Pasha woke up around noon, drank tea, and sat down again at his folder. The story of Veselka, where the priest had an income, was seriously disturbing. And besides, at night, the idea of church revival took root in him. Where to start feeding the family? With a search for income whined by the priest, or follow the leadership path? Pavel consulted with his wife and decided that one would not interfere with the other, and so, to warm up, he wrote 3 identical letters as a carbon copy. There he reported the unique wooden church was in trouble, that it needed to be revived, and that Pavel Brudanin was the best candidate to lead the process. Give money on the envelopes, he made bold notes. Do not pass by. After that, I took a shovel, a bag, and on the way to the pizza, I went to the post office, sent the letters to the president, the patriarch, and the governor. On the lawn near the falling wall, a familiar goat was gnawing dry weeds. Near the goat, the grandmother hostess was jostling. Pasha greeted them and went behind the wall so that they would not see, because income loves silence. I tried to dig, but the shovel kept poking at broken bricks, wire scraps, and some rubbish. Brudanin did not give up. He leaned on, and in half an hour he finally found another forged nail. Wow, exactly. The former student managed to find out from the museum benefactor yesterday that a magnet does not stick to silver and gold, and therefore he had a small furniture magnet in his pocket. Magnet dog to the nail of lime trees. Pasha sat down, cursed, wiped his forehead with his sleeve. The autumn sun warmed almost like yesterday. Such dry autumns rarely happen. Soon the grandmother, the owner of the goat, came up to the digger. Pavel, are you digging for the priest's gold? Grandma, are you a worm? Only worms. There's no gold here. I was a girl when the priest and the clerk were being taken away. So the warden and the policeman shook up the whole church. They didn't find anything. Then the church was broken. They did not find it back. Then the Germans with the Antimi were looking for mines. They walked and walked, but they did not find them. There's nothing here. I'm a worm, Grandma. Yes, worms. Your father also dug worms here. The kingdom of heaven, didn't he say? Nope. I remember that he has some gold and copper only on big holidays. All the best. All the children are small, the mother is sick, and the goat is more consumptive than mine. And yes, it's a tattered duckweed and a robe for the holiday. They lived very poorly. No, well, on Easter the whole world will bring him eggs and bacon, but otherwise he had no riches other than this. Then why does everyone say that they haven't found any treasures or incomes? Find it if you don't. I'll tell you this, it's not a small worm to dig. You should go to work, think about it. And Pavel promised to think about it. And then he dug a lot and wrote a lot. They answered him something, but they did not send him money. Pavel scribbled to the prosecutor's office that they did not give money. They were showing negligence, and the rarest memorial church was about to collapse. Inspections, commissions, correspondence came to the village. There were a lot of things. Soon, in order to somehow feed the family and support the important activities of his wife, beautiful, or of her husband, Elena got a job at the school as a cleaner. Time passed, then a large regional enterprise bought out the former collective farm fields, and again forgotten tractors grumbled and harvesters hummed in Veselki. A huge pig farm and a sausage factory appeared outside the village. People rebuilt houses, laid tiles in the yards, acquired some kind of transport. The school wing, sealed until better times, was reactivated again, and a new kindergarten was opened next door. A cell tower has grown outside the village and now winks at night with the lights of the heavenly stars. A little later, a young priest was sent to Veselki. He organized old women in the whole world, built a new church on the very place where the rotten wall had fallen. They even got some bells and hung them. Some realized that the priests were now discussing their golden incomes as bells. The priests were still young, so the bells were small, which meant that he had not yet accumulated. And where there are old priests, there are huge bells. Think about it. If you think, and logic will help you. Grandma Masha's funeral was held recently. A lot of people came. They did not fit into the church. They prayed in the street. There was also the chairman with a candle and an agronomist. A lot of people came from school and in general, almost the whole village. Only Pavel and his wife did not come. Paul himself believes in God, but he does not digest churchmen. And how can you go to the Russian Orthodox Church when they sell candles and they themselves drive around in cars? She is a former student, not an obscurantist, and she has forget-me-nots at heart. Paul Ivanovich Brudanin is now gray-haired. He finally saved up for a metal detector, went somewhere with it, and returned with pockets full of nails and spent German cartridges. And he is also used to writing that to this day he sends articles to the newspapers about the family church that was built during the time of his great-grandfather, and negligent authorities ruined the whole thing. He writes about the history of the surrounding villages where the priests served their income with many pounds of pure silver and ties of arable land too. The folder came in handy. To this day, the articles appear in the column, do not pass by, either in the district or even in the regional press. Pavel Ivanovich is now a respected local historian. Once they even sent him a diploma. They praise him. He is constantly invited to some local history conferences. He asks his wife for a ticket and goes. Archpriest Alexei Lizniak. God bless you, brothers and sisters. Thanks for listening. I'm still struggling with my voice. So I think I'm going to try to drink some hot coffee or something and see if I can't get my voice working right again. It's so raspy, it's hard for me to even get through a whole sentence. I love you all and thank you for joining me. Oh, we'll do some more about Byzantium. I have a friend in Turkey too that's trying to escape. She's Orthodox. She's Turkish, but she's Orthodox. And she was telling me stories where they'd be in church services and Muslims would bust into the church service and start disrupting it, or they'd attack them or slap them in the back of the head on the streets. It's really terrible, the things that are going on there to Orthodox Christians. She thought she was going to get killed a few times. I love you all, brothers and sisters. I'll be back a little bit later. I'll see you then. God bless.